we talk, and we're compelled to continually say things like, well, I promise, I swear, I'm telling the truth, for real, I'm not lying. Why do we say so much to keep trying to prove a point? The reason is because there's a trust problem, and it originates with our words. Get your Bible, open it up to Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. Matthew 5:33. I'm going to look in Matthew 5:33 through 37. Today I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. While you're looking up Matthew 5:33, let me just give you a little bit of background on this. The Jews back in the days of Jesus, they had introduced what we 21st century Westerners would consider some very strange oaths that they would put into common conversation. The conversations, they were full of these, what we would call a non-binding oath. And it would sound, of course, strange to us today. But, for example, they would swear by the temple, by their head, by the heaven, by the earth, as long as they didn't swear by the name of Yahweh God. And it had gotten ridiculous, and it was causing problems. And Jesus preached about it. What a mess. Jesus addressed the use of their words. I'm going to talk about what that means for us as well. So read with me Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37. He says, "You have also heard that our ancestors were told, 'You must not break your vows. You must carry out your vows you make to the Lord.'" Now that was found back in Numbers chapter 30, verse 2. You can read about that. So that was the original command. Now Jesus says, "But I say, do not make any vows. Don't say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne. And don't say by the earth, because the earth is his footstool. And don't say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great king. And don't say by my head, you can't even turn one of your hairs from white to black. Just say a simple, yes I will, no I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one." All right, now, Jesus wasn't talking about judicial oaths. He wasn't talking about oaths that were taken in court. He was merely talking about this foolish and wicked habit of constantly having to swear to something else in private conversation. Now, this is not as big of a problem in our culture today as it was at that time, but we need to take a look at this because there's a lot in this we can take from this teaching of Jesus. See, his primary message that I believe that we can receive for ourselves is this, is quit jabbering so much, speak with sincere honesty, and be sure your words are full of value, meaning, and purpose. Now, like you, I've said a lot of regretful things, and I'm still growing in this area. I'm doing a lot better than I used to, but talking simply comes very natural for me. So you might be in a situation right now where you have some relationships that you need to make them work. Maybe there's relationships that are falling apart or barely hanging on, and you need some help on how best to use your words. Well, this series on what Jesus says about our words is going to be very helpful with that. On the other hand, you might have great relationships with marriages, friendships with your children, your parents, your work associates. They're good, but you want to be able to make your words work better. Well, using the context of what Jesus was saying in his Sermon on the Mount, the reason people say so much and keep trying to prove their point and they talk too much is because there is a trust problem. You see, this is important. Eroded trust causes us to talk too much. Quality communications begins with trust. If I can't trust you, if you can't trust me, it doesn't matter what I'm saying, and it doesn't matter what you're saying. And as soon as you inject one element of mistruth with your words, then trust becomes a huge issue. Now, A prime example of this is something that happened historically. It happened a couple decades ago, about 2.5 decades ago, but a prime example of this was a series of very unfortunate events that happened in the latter years of the Clinton presidency in the 1990s. You see, he was caught lying, and it wasn't just an assumption that he lied. He was caught lying under oath, and it was very, very clear. So trust was broken, and it was very difficult for many people to believe anything he had to say after that. Fortunately, he was near the end of his presidency, but his ability for people to believe him, it just wasn't there anymore. So losing trust because of things you say can be a huge issue. That's why Jesus taught us that the foundation for quality communication is trust. I like the way Matthew 5:37 is stated in the Message version of the Bible. That's the final scripture here, the final verse from our passage today. It says it this way. It says, just say yes and no. When you manipulate words to get your own way, you go wrong. I believe we should build high levels of trust so that we don't have to pledge to another person that we're telling the truth. So we don't have to say, well, I promise I'm telling the truth. Honestly, I swear it's the truth. I mean, what does it mean even when we say things like that? Are we saying, well, sometimes I don't tell the truth, but this time I am? Really, what Jesus is saying in this passage is don't erode trust and let your yes be yes and let your no be no. So do you speak with integrity in your closest relationships? That's my question to you. Or are you eroding trust? Now, I want to share with you quickly 3 primary ways that trust is eroded through your words. One way that we can erode trust is by lying, just by simply not telling the truth. It started in the Garden of Eden and it continues today. It's either I don't trust you, or I think you don't trust me, or I'm afraid of what's going to happen, so we lie. There's a new word for it. We call it embellishing the truth. But let's call it what it is. Embellishing the truth is a lie. And when you lie, you have a problem trusting the hearer with the truth because you don't want them to hear the truth. But when they find out that you lied, they lose trust in you, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. So lying is one. A second way to erode trust is through what I would call flattery. Flattery is simply a positive lie. Flattery is saying something positive about somebody else with the intention of manipulating them. And so you can do this like by giving praise to someone else but you're really looking to benefit. Psalm chapter 12 verse 3 says, "May the Lord cut off all flattering lips." Ouch! I don't want my lips cut off. But that's how God feels about flattery. So we erode trust by lying and by flattery, and we also erode trust. The third way is by breaking promises. Breaking promises is a lousy way to gain trust. If you say you're going to do something, then do it. If you feel you can't do it in the first place, never promise that you will. If you're a parent, have you ever noticed how easy it is to break a promise to a young child? And usually, or sometimes, they don't even complain, but it will still erode trust. And that's something we have to watch out for. But the truth is, there's not a person watching who hasn't broken a promise. There isn't a person watching who hasn't lied. There isn't a person who hasn't flattered when they should not have. So how do we control our words, and how do we keep our trust intact? Well, today we're going to talk a little bit more about that, as well as the rest of this series. But here's a key, something that I strongly encourage you to do. Go back and be honest. If you write anything down in your notes today, write this down. Go back and be honest. And then say, I'm sorry, I broke that promise. Or whatever you need to apologize for. And bring attention to what you did, or really what you said, in a very humble manner. Sparingly use your words, and then that can bring healing. Now, it's not like everything's going to be perfect necessarily right after that. That all depends on the other person. But you have to start somewhere, and that's the best place to start. Go back, be honest, and be humble. Now, Jesus also taught that in order to restore trust in your words, you have to stop arguing over the details of the past and start talking about God's plan for the future. So you need to be able to leave the past behind and embrace God's future. That's huge. And when you begin to do that, later you'll be able to go back and look back at the past, but you don't have to live in it anymore, because you're never going to be able to rebuild trust while you're sitting in the middle of a pile of ashes of your past. I encourage you to get a new vision for your future, and this may mean that you may need to repair or replace your approach to life, and do that if you need to, but begin to move forward so that you can look back and deal with things objectively. And that is a strategic move that a lot of people need to make if you're stuck in a situation where your words have just simply got you into trouble relationally. Now, here in North Texas, we are supposed to water the foundations of our homes. Pretty much everyone knows that. It's due to the type of soil that's here in North Texas, in the area where we live. It's the type of soil that our homes are built on. You can't get rid of the soil. It's there, so what are you going to do? You see, what happens is the soil expands and it contracts according to the amount of rain. Now, you can have a huge, beautiful house, but if you don't install a sprinkler system or regularly water the foundation, eventually the soil will contract during a dry, hot summer, and your foundation can literally split in two. And many of you have seen it happen. The bricks on the outside of your house start to pull apart, or the drywall and your ceilings, they begin to crack. The doors don't close and open properly, and ceramic tile begins to break apart. Yes, I remember the first time I stumbled into this when I was a young married man, and we had gotten our very first house. I wasn't aware of any of this. I just didn't know. And come to find out, I was noticing some of the bricks pulling apart on the outside of the house. I just thought that was odd, and saw some cracks in the walls and the ceiling. That's odd. And then all of a sudden I started noticing that ceramic tile in our kitchen was cracking all across the kitchen. What a mess. Our foundation was splitting. Now, the only way to fix this is to have an expensive foundation repair service, and they have to come in and fix it. But many of us need to have our relational foundations established, or examined, I guess you could say, and repaired, because what was established has begun to fall apart. And it's because trust has been broken. See, trust is the foundation of relationships. So when we repair trust, it will foundationally be able to help us to have more quality relationships and have healthy communications. So maybe you need to have the foundation of trust repaired before things can become healthy again in your relationships. And it could be in your marriage, it could be on the job, it could be with your parent or with a child. But repairing the foundation of broken trust is worth it. It is. I think of it this way. If it's worth it to repair the foundation of a house, it's certainly worth it for the relationship. And it begins with rebuilding trust by using your words different. So that's my challenge today as we move into this new series. So some of you need to use your words different immediately. No more saying, I promise, I swear. Stop all that. Begin to say right now, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. I want to make things right. And again, just quit jabbering so much. Speak with sincere honesty, and be sure that your words are full of value, meaning, and purpose, and blessing. Authentic, genuine blessing, not flattery. Remember this, Matthew 5:37. Jesus says this from the Message version of the Bible: just let your yes be yes, just say yes and no. Because when you manipulate words to get your own way, you always go wrong. I want to pray for you right now. God, I pray for every person who's listening to this. I pray that you will help us to guard our lips and to speak only what is right, and to use our words appropriately so that we can have a strong foundation of trust. And where trust has been broken and whether that foundation is no longer stable, I pray for a restoration. I pray for healing. I pray that you will help us to use our words sparingly and to say the right words to bring healing in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I hope you'll join me for the next part of this, because I'm going to continue to talk about what Jesus has to say about our words. God bless.